Any Sims-like game, even headed into early access, seems to get pretty dramatic responses. When Paralyzed was first announced, some declared it was a Sims killer, other people said it was dead because it looked really ugly. And of course, Life by You from Paradox was also called a Sims killer, and now that spotlight has been transferred to InZoi. Some headlines are declaring it a hollow game, tread with care, and these are just a few descriptors for InZoi early access reviews from Metacritic and beyond. But beyond these dramatic headlines are reviews that actually see the true potential of an early access game. Now, before you go ahead and type that I am paid by EA, trust me, my point with this video is to show how interesting the criticism gets when a game like this hits early access. And in reviewing this discourse, it's not really about InZoi in general, but the mounting pressure, expectations, and complexities of discussing games in early access. And I think it is particularly for games being compared to The Sims. Now honestly, The Sims has had a monopoly for far too long in my opinion. I have long said I think there needs to be other games in this genre, and I even have a feeling that Will Wright would agree. In this regard, it is understandable that people are having really strong emotions about InZoi and Paralives and any of these other games. After all, Sims 4 right now does have tons of bugs, and that's saying it mildly. Sims 4 has save corruption issues and pretty much bugs in every single pack. And while some bugs are understandable and bugs are going to occur in most games, obviously it has reached a very high level. In addition, there have been criticisms from Sims 4 from day one from its empty design, and that empty design comes down to the very foundation of the game. If you want some more information about the origins of Sims 4, definitely check out Plumbella's channel, she does an excellent job. And for this reason, it is perfectly understandable that people want a game to do really well, and honestly, some people do want to see The Sims die. They might want it because they just are so upset with what EA has done with a franchise they used to love. And so, because of this, we're getting some pretty extreme reactions, I would argue, on both sides. On one hand, a large group of fans seem to think that InZoi is going to be the best game ever, but on the other hand, there are critics that are saying that it is a soulless game, which honestly I think sounds pretty harsh considering all the different features InZoi offers, but more so because I think InZoi has a long time to develop and to flesh out some of the features they are more critical of. However, I would look past those headlines, because even the most critical of InZoi do have pros about this game. The one that called it soulless has pros such as incredible customization, visually stunning, and lots of potential. For all the noise about a rich simulated reality, InZoi currently underperforms and overpromises. It's a gorgeous game with a best-in-class character creator, but it doesn't provide anything amounting to a fulfilling life for InZois. It does claim that it is monotonous, unrewarding, limited gameplay, and still feels early stage. And of course, it is early stage, it is early access. Now we can argue how good does a game need to be before it enters early access, and people seem to have pretty diverse opinions on this. However, like I said, even the most critical reviews here are saying it still has tons of potential. And so I think what happens is that gets all the headlines and that gets all the clicks, calling that InZoi is soulless and not a worthy competitor. However, if you go on other platforms, what gets most attention is people saying that InZoi is going to kill The Sims. So in other words, you have to look in the context in which this is being said and also see there's more to the story than just the headline. And in my humble opinion, a good example of a nuanced review comes from IGN. InZoi Early Access Review in Progress. Addressing the elephant in the room, it's impossible not to immediately compare InZoi to The Sims. Its level similarities quickly run thin once you start digging into Krafton's unique take on this genre. So in other words, it's natural to compare because it's in the same genre, but this game is doing things that Sims is not, and vice versa. I do note it's amazing you get so much to explore and it is beautiful at first glance. However, they will say it feels a little hollow. Neon signs sit atop of empty buildings, and the gentle sunlight reflects off static bits of set dressing. A lot of care has been taken to give the impression of a bustling environment. However, they will say that there is a lot of set dressing. Now, I will say for this, number one, there's time to address this, and number two, I hate to say it, but already InZoi does require higher specs, which I think is reasonable for this game. And I hate to say this, but I think having some things as set dressing might be a good idea for this game. Again, it's very early on, and they can still work to optimize it. Now, there were other criticisms in this review. They mentioned that the traits and personalities didn't have as much impact as they hoped, and overall progressing relationships could feel a little monotonous. Now, I do know on their roadmap they have plans to improve traits and personalities further on, as well as other interactions. Of course, this is a core of a game in my humble opinion, and so I don't see anything wrong with providing this critique. On the other hand, I don't know how long they had to actually play with this game, and sometimes it can be hard to actually get a take on how well it is done if you haven't spent ample time with it. Meanwhile, however, other reviews really praise the game in terms of its customization, just the sheer amount of things you can do, and also the unique karma system. The karma system adds depth to the world and also some consequences for your gameplay. It is really interesting because even the most negative headlines, as far as I can tell, have positives for this game. So in other words, I don't think that InZoi is dead on arrival, and I also don't think it's bound to be the best game ever. My rambling aside, my point in making this video actually isn't about InZoi. It's actually thinking about what will happen with other games too in the future that are compared to The Sims. The Sims definitely has tons of problems, but on the other hand, it also has a long legacy, and The Sims has a very specific flavor to it. So I think expectations are really high. Some people just want a quote-unquote better game, some people just want an alternative or just another game to play, and some people want to see Sims die forever. So there are varying expectations, and I think that's very heavy expectations going into early access. As the producers of both Paralives and Krafton have said, making a game like this is very complex, and honestly, it's a risk too. And for that, it all comes down to this: how should we critique games? My personal opinion is games should be open to critique, and saying something negative about a game, quote unquote, doesn't mean you hate the game or want it to fail. However, there's a difference between constructive critique and saying that a game is just doomed or it's lifeless or soulless. I don't think those are very constructive words. If you say you think that the traits don't have enough impact, I do not think that's hating on the game. I think that's wanting the game to do better. And I think Paralives should also be open to some scrutiny. However, it's also important at the same time to remember these games are in early access. Constructive feedback is important, but at the same time, it's not the same as a finished game, and that is important to keep in mind before making a final verdict. So let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I'm sure I will get some comments saying I'm an EA shill or that I am paid by Andrew Wilson, but honestly, I have tons of problems with The Sims. I'm not paid by The Sims, and I also think this applies way more broadly than just InZoi. As always, please take care, and I will see you in the next video.